Hello. Welcome to the bigger picture. My name is Ayodele Nzinga. I'm the Poet Laureate of Oakland, California, and an artist in Oakland, California, who is really, really happy to be in the studio today with a dear friend and colleague, Claudia Alick of Calling Up Justice. And we're going to have a conversation about inheritance. And as always, the bigger picture is interested in not only what's on the surface, the things that we can't help but see, but we're interested in the things that are beyond the edges, the big picture, the bigger picture, pun intended. So today our topic is inheritance, because that is the theme of BAMFest this year. So we're going to start talking about inheritance, and we'll get into the stories that we have a right to tell, and the stories we have a responsibility to tell. And that makes Claudia a very interesting guest. And the story of Claudia and I is we originally were long distance colleagues. Claudia was working for Oregon Shakespeare, and we were colleagues for a number of years without ever meeting each other. And then we ended up in the same space, and what had been a virtual mutual support relationship turned into a friendship and mutual work here in the Bay Area. So I'd like to give Claudia a few moments to tell us a bit about herself and her work. Good morning, Claudia. How you doing?
It is so lovely to be here in the bigger picture with you, Dr. Ayodele Nzinga. It's a pleasure. I always feel so overwhelmed when someone asks me to introduce myself, only because I feel like I lived lifetimes and held so many different identities, and am leading a lifestyle right now where I find it difficult to hold one title. I kind of like calling myself a producer. I'm a cultural producer. I produce things that are written. I produce things that are embodied. I produce things that are the culmination of other people doing stuff. So I produce festivals, I produce networks, and I produce a lot of things on computers. So I do a lot.
And in that, you managed to work in Calling Up Justice, which has a very specific mission. Could you share a little bit about Calling Up Justice with us? How it was founded, and what's its work? How does it connect to what you do in the world?
Well, I love that you mentioned us collaborating at a distance. I was working at the Oregon Shakespeare Theater for about 10 years, I think. And a lot of my work there was bringing people to that community, because my mission was always racial justice. My personal mission was always disability justice. And I was always doing shenanigans to use that job to help manifest that in the local community there, and also manifest larger projects nationally. What was your question?
Tell us about Calling Up Justice, how it was founded, and
Yeah.
how it relates to you being a producer.
Well, so I left that job, and I had a lot of theaters that immediately reached out to me because they were looking for artistic directors. And I had a lot of people who were like, well, the logical next step for your career is, and I realized I did not want to be the leader of one tiny theater. I did not want to be the leader of one large theater. I did not want to inherit a white supremacy legacy that I then had to fix. It didn't feel like a good project. We have limited time on this earth. And I was like, how can I use my time better? So I was like, let me start a practice where I can have impact all over the country, all over the world. So with the Calling Up Justice practice, it was an attempt to create something that was a decolonized structure for me to produce all of my dreams and not be trapped in legacy structures that are colonialist in nature.
Hmm. And so, talk to me a minute about disability justice. If act as if I just heard those words for the first time, what does that mean?
Well, disability justice as a framework, I like to use the ideas that Sins Invalid came up with. This was a group of disabled artists that helped to craft language that helps us to understand our needs beyond the ADA. Disability justice is about recognizing that disabled people are full human beings. It's anti-capitalist, it's anti-racist, and it's about embracing our full natures. And with my own practice, I'm a disabled person, but also I'm gendered female. I'm queer. I'm disabled. There are a lot of places of leadership where even when I get there, it's a little bit of a trap. I also felt like a lot of the ways we were invited into doing cultural producing, doing entertainments, working in the industry, they felt like they were invitations to be extracted from. So I wanted to figure out, how can I build? How can I build at scale with as many other amazing, brilliant artists all over the country? How can I build in ways that are anti-genocidal, that will affirm our identities as people who are trans, as people who are Black, as full human beings? How can we have a cultural producing practice that is life-giving? And also, I love the word theater. I do, but I'm a poet. And to me, all the world's a stage, right? All I need is a circle. I just need people to get together in a circle, and that's how we make the magic. And so for us, it was about thinking beyond the building that some white guy built that he calls the special theater that we're supposed to feel good about performing in. It was about recognizing that sometimes the performance that takes place out in a field is more significant. Sometimes the performance we make that takes place over a computer is more significant. And also, we can make performances that can take place across space and time. So we're not just limited to one singular moment. And that means, as a disabled person, I have the ability to participate in building over the course of time. You talked about ancestry, and I think about this all as 7 generations of work. So with Calling Up Justice, I'm attempting to situate our practice inside 7 generations of past practice and building towards 7 generations of future practice.
And so, being a person, myself, who comes from a background of doing theater in non-traditional places, the Lower Bottom Playaz, as people know them right now, were founded in 1999. And people say that our story actually begins in the backyard at 920 Prescott. We were actually a fully formed troupe when we came to 920 Prescott. We had become a group because I started to work with the same theater artists over and over again in super experimental theater that would be in places like churches, halfway houses, parks, eventually even inside juvenile hall. So these non-traditional spaces, homeless shelters was a big place for us to go and perform. And then having transitioned into having a theater built for us, an outdoor theater. Again, an outdoor theater in the backyard of this West Oakland mansion is still rather a non-traditional space. So our journey has landed us in what looks like a Euro theater space. It has 4 walls. It is a black box. It has a lighting grid, et cetera, et cetera. We still strive to break the boundaries between theater creativity and its connection to the Black experience as a space to tell our stories, and to tell our stories in the most authentic and original ways in which we can. And what I love about working with you is that it expands the audience. It expands the number of people that we can be in conversation with. It takes the best of theater and gives it the benefit that film has. You shoot film once and then you live in a can for 1,000 years.
Mm.
Being brought into a virtual environment extends that live theater moment in the same way that working in film does. And it welcomes in audiences who would not get to see the work. We now get to perform for international audiences, or certainly audiences in other states. So the idea of working with you to be able to amplify the signal is like this super brilliant, you know, high tech way of extending the reach of theater. So I'm super psyched about it
I love
from
this.
from that position. How do we drag the field, the entire field, into a
Mm.
whole brand new place? And some of these lessons are learned from COVID when we could not go outside. And also the perpetual thought that theater does not pay for itself, perhaps because it's so special and precious and temporal that it makes it difficult then to pay for large productions where you put a lot of effort into it without charging people $1 million. And we don't charge people $1 million. So we sort of experimented virtually during COVID, and now we understand, nah, this is just a thing we do that we add to every production. So yeah, you know.
I think about theater. Theater itself already is time travel, right? Because it's taking words that people built. It's inviting us all to like be inside the imagination of folks who aren't there anymore. So I think theater is already time travel. There's already that aspect to it. I think about the Black Arts Movement House, you know, where your theater is located now. And I was actually in that building. I was in that building in like 2018. I was doing a project that I called Walkabout, where I was traveling the country and I was doing a little bit of a survey, trying to figure out how do we have liberation as cultural producers in the United States? The theater itself was feeling like a trap. The industry was feeling like a trap. So I was wandering the country trying to find people who were trying to desperately do something different. There was a group of theater makers. They were ensemble theater makers. Ragged Wing was one of them. Names of these theater companies, right? So like I'm traveling all over the country. I fly into the Bay Area. I'm invited to see, I don't remember the name of the play. It was a very curious piece of art. I'll be honest, it didn't have like a direct plot, right? It just had lots of cool stuff happening and a tree and people. I was in that space. I remember sitting there and having a conversation with those makers, and they had mentioned, oh yeah, the Lower Bottom Playaz is one of the theaters that's a part of this cohort of things that we're trying to do. We're trying to maintain this building as a site of cultural production. And it costs so much money. And there are all of these challenges. And I was looking at questions of, shared leadership, a bunch of smaller companies coming together. Is this a solution? Is this something other people need to do? But I was also there because Lower Bottom Playaz was in there. And I'll be honest, one of the only reasons I was there was because Lower Bottom Playaz was there. I was like, I'm not trying to be in spaces where predominantly white groups of people try to solve the problem that they helped to produce over generations. You can't do it on your own, and your solutions will never be the correct solutions. So then cut to 5-6 years later, I'm once again in that building, getting a tour of the building and being like, why am I feeling this deja vu? And I realized, oh, right. I am stepping through the culmination of the things people were dreaming of. Like they were dreaming of something that you're manifesting with that building and that physical location. And in many ways, what's a black box theater? A black box theater is also a type of technology that can be anything, any space. And I go in there and actors perform and dance and make music, and I'm transported to another place. And then what am I trying to do that connects to what you're doing? I'm just doing the same thing with computers, right? Where like you compared what I was doing to film, but I would argue that Theater is theater is theater. It doesn't matter if it's pre-recorded materials. It's actually about the ability to have live relational exchange so that we can create relational power between us. It's the act of not only you having recorded your play so somebody else can watch it later. That's power. But what happens when I watch it with another person together? That's theater. That's the thing I'm most excited about. People power.
And I'm really interested in us pushing the limits where, yes, it's available to watch later. I want to bring all the audiences together in the room at one time. I'm looking for a live stream play that has a physical audience in the room and has a virtual audience watching in real time. There is a thing about live theater where each performance is unique and the watchers actually form the circle no matter where they are. And if there's a situation where there can be incoming chat from a virtual audience that is the same as the ooh, the ah, the monster's in the closet.
Yes,
That
yes.
comes from live theater. We have created this different field to play on. And then that experience that enabled both physical and virtual audiences can then be played back. It's like this infinite loop of touches. And when I consider theater from the point of view as a maker, and we're going to own all our hats in here today, So yeah, you're watching two women speak who are having a particular conversation, who are producers, who are also creators, who are occasionally in front of the microphone or in front of the camera. They're actresses, they're poets. Um, we're overdrive creators is what we are. And so there are any number of hats because you also then do the administrative work for Calling Justice. Like I run Lower Bottom Playaz, curate for BAM House, and do the administrative lift for BAM CDC. So
I would argue that people holding one role, only being able to do one thing, that's a white supremacy culture mythology. I think the way we lead and live our lives, that's how it's supposed to be.
We live at a time when people no longer prepare for one career. The idea that you're going to graduate college and teach school and then retire from teaching school and be over with is no longer a practical thought. The world moves too fast. And any given time, any given life, you may be many things. Hopefully, your world is integrated enough where something holds it all together. I like to tell people that even though I do 10, 20 things, they're all held together by the fact that the work I do is all about human thriving. I'm in conversation because that's of interest to me. And I have many ways in which to be in conversation. I write plays, I act, we write scholarly articles, we're poet. And so being given an audience is being given a chance to be in conversation. There are many ways to find yourself to an audience. And in creative work, you probably will hold more than one chair in terms of getting large projects out. And let's be very clear here. We both think on real large scales. This is not about a small one-off, or a play that's going to run 3 weeks and we've done our thing. These are our lifelong commitments to building a body of work in the vein that we are discussing. So who are you inheriting from? I could tell you who some of my creative ancestors are. You know them. Sonia Sanchez says, I got words. I stand on Marvin X's shoulders. Amiri Baraka was like a kindly grandfather, and his relationship with Marvin X supported my work no end. So it's no accident that I end up a child of the Black arts continuum the role was cleared for me. I was nurtured for exactly this moment and made clearly to understand that I am to nurture people for the next moment. So who did you inherit your views from? Who poured into you to bring us to this moment?
I struggle. I struggle whenever I'm asked this question because, I've done these exercises where that's all we do. We just sit in a room and we just list names, names and names and names. And there are some names, there are people who poured into me and I don't remember their names. They were like old Black folks who said something super amazing to me when I was little. And I'm holding on to it today as like a way I live my life. And I don't remember that person's name anymore. Right. So like I spent a lot of time in kitchens, in churches. And actually I'm going to say in faith institutions, because my mother was not only Christian, she was also Buddhist. And I would always go to the kitchen regardless of the faith institution. So I was either rolling sushi or I was stirring some kind of a pot, listening to older women talk about everything, talk about the performance, the faith performance. And I was learning from that conversation, talking about how they lived their lives and their troubles. And I was learning from that. So there's that. There's also the act of I read voraciously and I grabbed anything I could get my hands on. There was a phase I went through where I would go to the library and I was raised in Montana and I was desperate for Blackness. So I would go to the library, just imagine Claudia, very tiny, like 5 years old, 6 years old, just being like, could you give me some books by Black people? And then the teacher being like, oh, I don't think I should give this 6-year-old James Baldwin, And then eventually choosing Anansi stories for me. And then I read all of them. I read every single African folktale in the library. I read all the books that were appropriate for my age range. I ran through them. I remember I was really into Langston Hughes as a poet. Again, when I was 8. I was reading poetry where I didn't totally understand what I was like. I'm remembering I was into The Color Purple hardcore, and I wrote a book report about The Color Purple when I was in the 3rd grade, and the teacher was infuriated and called me and my mother in and said, how dare your child lie to us? We know she just watched the movie. And my mother was like, I haven't let her watch the movie yet. She got a hold of my book. She didn't have permission to read it. I didn't know. I'm proud of her. And you can see that she missed pieces because I read that book 4 or 5 times. It was a new book to me every time I read it because part of my brain had grown and I came to understand what the book was actually talking about. I grew up with The Color Purple now that I think of it. I could talk like this for hours, though. It's a problem. I haven't even started talking about the theater artists. Lord have mercy. So many.
I find what you just said so interesting, though. You do understand that you share an experience with James Baldwin, who got called up for this not being his work. It's not possible that he could create this work. And with Wilson, who I'm absolutely in love with. Wilson was called out at around 16, I think, for plagiarism for a piece of work that couldn't possibly be his, but of course was. And me, in 7th grade, I wrote my first full-length play. It was called The Complete Autobiography of Blackie. And I had gotten kicked out of the school that I was going to because I had discovered the Black Panthers and protesting and things. So I was kicked out of, this is, at this point in time, my family lived in Vallejo, and there are only a handful of schools. And so I was kicked out of the Black school, and the only place to send me was either to the nuns or the white school. So I passed through the nuns and ended up in the white school. I passed through the nuns. That's a whole different story about my mother, who has no religion, but always sent me to with the Samoans, and I went through catechism. That's a whole story by itself. Okay, so the teacher who incidentally introduced me to Langston Hughes, because that teacher had been a forensics star and had been a forensics national person in her youth, got me interested in the forensics team and debate, introduced me to Langston Hughes. That same teacher accused me of plagiarism because the complete autobiography of Blackie, she said, resembled work she had done, which was a super compliment to me, like a 14, 15-year-old, because I did not plagiarize her work. And so for the fact that she thought the work was so good that it was this, no, this is something, I always took it as a compliment, although I lost this blind love for this beautiful young Black teacher who introduced me to Langston Hughes. The first poem I ever heard by Langston Hughes was her performing Freedom Train. And I went on to perform Freedom Train. Yeah, it's hard. I'm stopping myself from doing it right now. Okay. But the connections, again, inheritance. And I think sometimes when you think of inheritance, I love what you said about the nameless people who are not nameless because you're careless. It's just there were so many of them, and the teaching was indirect. So you are in a place where you're soaking up things like a sponge, you know? That is so beautiful. I think also our inheritances spring from things we saw or experienced, and we decided to do them totally different because of our experiences. For one thing, what that teacher turned me on to that I carry with me in my practice to this very day, very small children have very complete and complex thoughts. And so, like with my summer program, we as kids as young as 5, things like, if you had a conversation with God and you could change one thing, what would it be? Kids come in with their own questions like, what do you want the afterlife to be? Or if you could talk to a dead ancestor, who would it be? These are 5-year-olds bringing in these questions. And we sit up and have 20, 30-minute conversations in which I feel like I'm talking to colleagues or peers, not kids, you know.
That's the beauty of your practice. You're seeing the full humanity and investing in the full humanity of the humans that you're collaborating with. I feel like in so many spaces that we're invited to narrow what we think humans are capable of, what humans are. We're invited to dehumanize. And so it's not surprising when the people that we're around don't believe us when we are as great as we are. In many ways, the calling of justice practice, a lot of times, I'm just sitting in rooms affirming the truth. People think I'm making them amazing. And I'm like, I'm not making you amazing. I'm just acknowledging that you're amazing and giving you the capability to do that with each other in a circle and to create things that are amazing. It's a lie that we aren't already amazing. That's how you disempower a child. You assume it can't answer a question about God or ask a question about God.
I think we're all amazingly brilliant in miracles that we are here in the possibility of being in conversation. And I think of all the things they take from children to call them adults. And the most important thing is their creativity and their imagination, where they tell us now you can't be daydreaming all the time. You need to be serious. You need to show up on time for work, and we then train you to exchange the rest of your time on this planet for things. I by accident watched Betty DeVos on C-SPAN this morning, and to see what they are doing to education. We are returning to a time when we no longer invest in higher education unless you can afford it. That means elites will continue to study philosophy and still get higher degrees. But I watched them this morning talk about how they're going to funnel the rest of our children into being trained for manufacturing jobs. The manufacturing that this administration imagines is coming back to America. This is their plan for how we coexist with automation and AI. So talk to me about how we are going to use, I just assume you as a co-conspirator in my desire to make sure that we keep open space for imagination and something better than what they have planned for us.
100%. I think about, here's the funny thing. You mentioned Betsy DeVos. It wasn't actually Betsy DeVos that you saw. You saw a very similarly styled older white woman who looked exactly the same and was doing the exact same thing. But you saw Linda McMahon. You saw the wife of the WWE person, I'm assuming, right?
She was an older white lady, and all
Yep,
older white
yep,
ladies talking
yep,
dumb, unfortunately, blend for me.
This is the point that I'm making. Like, they are almost exactly the same. Supremacy
Okay.
culture does not have imagination. It repeats itself. It gives us the same thing over and over again. So it's completely unsurprising that the head of education that was dismantling the education department under the previous Trump administration, you got them confused with the one that's doing it right now, because they're similar humans being cast in a similar role to do a similar performance. All the world's a stage, right? But who gets to write the script? Who gets to be in charge of the narrative? Who gets to say what the bigger picture is, right?
That's
So
right.
I'm 100% with you when I say we need to be educating ourselves and getting everybody educated, right? Like the reason they defund education, the reason they defund the library, the reason why they didn't want my slave ancestors, they didn't want them to learn to read. They punished them for learning how to read. And it's because they didn't want them to produce a person like me. When we
Hey.
know stuff, we have power.
Mm-hmm. Hey, the same reason they silenced the drum, the same reason they took the poets first in Myanmar, the same people who tell us that it's nice if you can sing a song, but being an artist is not a serious profession. It is the most powerful thing in the world, to be able to help shape the way that people think. And if a thing has no story, did it actually ever happen? And so, therefore, erasure is a tool, but then so's a drum, you know? You erase it, we rewrite it, you know? And so the idea also of archiving, of collecting history, we are going to archive together because we are counterculture. And whatever you do to make us little, we're doing something else to make us big. However, you try to erase us. Now we're writing ourselves in different places where, you don't have access to find and erase. And I want to acknowledge, my people told me that it is Linda McMahon that I actually
Hey,
said.
I got
It's
it.
just so funny to me. I'm sorry. I don't mean to say that all Karens look alike. They do. Okay. It is
But
the same person on repeat. Okay.
mm, mm. You said something. You're talking about the drum. And
Mm.
I have this poem that has a line in it that says, "They stole our drums and used them to reinforce our chains." This morning in our liberation meditation, I do a thing every morning where I live stream as a cartoon character because I'm a ridiculous person. So I was live streaming as a moon floating through the universe, and we were talking about how one of the ways supremacy culture gets us to not fight for our stuff, they steal our things. They're stealing our things all the time. They're like, "Do all this work. Your work isn't valuable. I'm going to take all the things that you made and use them to make things that are valuable." And that's how they trick us. They create a story that's about how what we make doesn't have value. So like part of the exercise of, I'm going to only speak for my own practice, although I feel like this might be true for yours as well. Part of our exercise is to reclaim the archive, is to make sure our stories remain fresh. Just as you maintain the forest, we're trying to maintain the archive. We're trying to maintain our stories so that 7 generations from now, people will be able to grow from what we made for them. So that we can be connected. This is anti-genocidal work, and it's anti-genocidal work throughout time, from the past to the future. Our narratives are so vital and important in all aspects, written and also digitized. That's why this work is so vital.
You just tapped into this really natural correlation that makes me know that we're right. This is very much how nature works. I was given a tree in Joaquin Miller Park. That's a big story too. In Joaquin Miller Park, there's a whole big story there. It's part of the reason I took it. Anything we can take back from Joaquin Miller, yeah. Okay. So the tree I chose is a redwood. It's appropriate and a good segue for the conversation we're in now, because I chose it because it has all these saplings surrounding it. A redwood tree, the way it procreates is if you snap the tree, then the saplings around it in the same space tap into the same root system and come back up. I take my kids in my summer camp out to Joaquin Miller every week. One, to take up space. For two, because nature is medicine. Three, because everything I do has to do with human thriving. And a part of that is caring for the big blue ball that we're on, that I think is part of the miracle of us existing. So the idea that we are doing tree work here, you see, that's mycelium work, making sure that the archive is there. It's redwood work, making sure the saplings are in the loop, the under forest. People go to the forest and they look at the very tall trees and they call it the forest. Actually, the forest is the under forest. All the small things there that will grow if you come for the big things. You can never really have the forest, you know? You'd have to build cement on it. And if you don't watch out, the forest will grow through the cement because it has seeded itself for generations to come. And like mycelium, we need to understand that we need to be in constant underground connection with one another. You know, that what the trees do is so great in terms of sharing medicine, sharing knowledge, sharing stories. And so to be like mycelium is like a superpower. So yeah.
Ayodele, get out of my head. Get out of my head. All right. So we do a thing called the quarantine residency because I'm leading an extraordinarily COVID safe life, right? So an artist will come here. And so we recently had this amazing artist from Appalachia come all the way out here. And then they actually, you were part of this. We went to the Black Arts Movement House, did a tour of the Black Arts Movement House. And then we walked all throughout Oakland seeing things. And we had all these adventures. And one of the adventures I took them on was to the Redwoods. I always take my quarantine guest artists on a special trip to the Redwoods so we can learn what the forest has to share with us. And then one of the main things the forest has to share with us is the trees aren't the most important thing. And in fact, some of the most important stuff is invisible to us. It's taking place underground. And in calling up justice, we consider ourselves a mycorrhizal forest where each of us are like separate redwood trees. Our practices are our own trees. And then we've got these underground networks where we're exchanging nutrients and information. And we have different practice members that are like salmon. So like one practice member can physically go all the way to New York City to work with the disabled dancers with how we move and then connect us there and then bring back friendships and practice. And we love redwood forests as a metaphor. So I was getting real hype when you were talking what you were talking because I was like, yes. And I love that this is because we're dealing with work that's deeply technological. Like one of the projects I did with you was The Call, where we had folks from Nigeria and Oakland, and we were all coming together on the internet at midnight for a special ritual performance about Watch Night and Black culture. And it was such a digital performance, but I would argue that that was us making the forest happen on the internet. Like that was us doing the thing.
Yes. I could talk to you for hours, literally. I see that we are sort of at where we need to wrap. I definitely want to have you back on the bigger picture again. Currently, this is produced just during BAMFest, but I think it's gonna grow outside of this world. I have so much fun. It is fun. It's fun sitting down, actually talking to colleagues about the work. I love talking about the practice. I'm a theoretician as well as a practitioner, so I get fed by finding the places of alignment. So it's been like being in church with you for 30 minutes, and I'm so grateful. I have to give you a copy of poetries. It's one of my books. There's a story there. There's always a story, isn't there, Claudia? Would you like to close this out with a short story that gets us out the door? What do we need to be walking and looking out for in terms of our collaboration? And we are being told it's time. So you got a whole minute to do this. Go.
That was a really large invitation. I'm not sure how to grab it and take it and tell you a story. Yeah, I don't know.
Tell me quickly what Gather Town will look like
all right.
by the end of the year. What will Gather Town look like? What is Gather Town?
All right.
Literally, we only got a couple of minutes. Go.
All right. So to close us out, I'm going to talk about the collaboration that we are doing with the Digital Black Arts Movement Business District. We're doing this on a platform called Gather Town, but I don't care about the platform. I care about what we get to do on it. So what we've done is we are building a digital replica of your neighborhood. And already we've had one of our artists taking photos of the street and then digitizing them so that our little cartoon characters can walk through the little digital streets that we've built, and it looks like the street art is on the streets. So that beautiful picture of Marsha P. Oh, I'm messing up Marsha P's last name. I love Marsha P. Roots. That beautiful mural of her, it's inside the digital encampment. So we're going to have it's an archive, it's a performance space, it's a connective space, and it's a lot of fun. And we're manifesting it in the month of August with y'all.
So that was like an open-ended invitation to tell you that Claudia will be back on the bigger picture at some point in time in the new broadcast that's going to come to life outside of BAMFest to invite you into this new digital space. One of our pillars is archiving. And so this is our innovative way into entering into animating that pillar. This has been the bigger picture. I am Ayodele Nzinga. My guest is Claudia Alick of Calling Up Justice. And we've had a wonderful time. We hope you've enjoyed our conversation. We hope you dip into other events during the festival and look out for Claudia. Go to the participants page at bamfest.com and look out for Claudia so you can keep up with some of the things that Claudia will be doing underneath the scene in the mycelium space of BAMFest. And with that, thank you so much, Claudia. Until the next time, peace and blessings.